Hi there, I'm Kala. Ever been told on your own birthday that no one's coming? Not even your parents? Yeah, mine actually wrote that to my best friend, said I should just deal with it. But that wasn't the worst part. They threw a barbecue the same day, called it a real family gathering, and posted the pictures like I didn't exist. They used my name to open credit cards. They faked my signature. Then they held a backyard cleansing ceremony to erase me. Why? Why would your own family go that far just to silence you? And what do you do when the people who raised you start using love as a weapon? Let me tell you what I did. The letter that didn't even have my name. The letter wasn't even addressed to me. It showed up in Narina's mailbox 2 days before my 33rd birthday, nestled between her utility bill and a coupon flyer for frozen pizza. The envelope was hand-addressed, the penmanship unmistakable, tight, sharp cursive with that little flourish my mother always used when she was trying too hard to appear composed. Narina stared at it like it might explode. "It's from your mom," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I raised an eyebrow. "Birthday card?" She hesitated, then handed it to me. "Kala, I don't think you should read this right now." That's when I knew. Birthday cards don't come with warnings. I took it anyway. My fingers were steady, but my stomach wasn't. The seal peeled away with that slow, papery sound, and inside was a single sheet of lined stationery. 7 words. "Don't expect anyone at her birthday. Deal with it." No signature, no explanation. Just that sentence, aimed like a dart at the center of my spine. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer under our grocery lists, next to expired coupons and takeout menus. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a moment. But something behind my ribs curled tight and didn't let go. Narina sat across from me at the kitchen island. Her face was drawn, cautious, as if she were afraid I might break. "You okay?" "I'm tired," I said. She nodded, knowing better than to ask of what. It wasn't the first time my mother had made an occasion feel like a debt. When I was 9, I asked for a chocolate cake for my birthday. What I got was a lecture and a pair of wool socks. "Do you know how hard it is to put food on this table?" she said as I held the socks in my lap. "You should be grateful." Gratitude. That was the currency in our household. Every hug had a price tag. Every "I love you" came stapled to a receipt. "You think your birthday matters more than the woman who raised you?" That was her favorite line, followed closely by, "I gave up my whole life for you, don't forget that." As if existing had been a burden I forced her to carry. Thane, my father, never intervened. He just disappeared into the background like wallpaper, present, but silent. When he did speak, it was always something like, "Let your mother handle it," or worse, "Don't start trouble." So I learned not to start trouble. I learned to swallow disappointment like aspirin. Not pleasant, but necessary. By the time I was 16, I stopped expecting birthday parties. By 21, I stopped mentioning the date altogether. But even then, I held onto a tiny, frayed string of hope. Maybe one day, they'd show up without a grudge in tow. I was 33 now, and I finally realized that string had been severed years ago. Narina stayed quiet for a while, sipping from a chipped blue mug that read, #1 Plant Mom. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, like a room that had just been told a secret. "I know you don't want to hear it," she said eventually, "but that letter? It's cruel." I gave a half shrug. "It's familiar?" She reached across the counter, hand hovering like she wanted to touch mine, but wasn't sure if I'd accept it. "Kala, I hate how numb you've gotten to this." I finally met her eyes. "Numb isn't bad. Numb lets you plan a party and not wonder if your parents are going to ruin it." I turned to the notepad beside me. The guest list sat blank except for one scribbled word at the top. Confirmed. It was time to fill it out, with people who chose me. I started listing names, co-workers who sent me funny memes during lunch breaks, a neighbor who once helped me jump my car battery at 6 a.m. friends from my volunteer shift at the shelter. Narina, of course. No family, not this year. I could hear my mother's voice already, echoing from some imagined phone call. "Wow, all these strangers but not your own blood? That's sad." But what was really sad was how long I'd waited for that blood to act like they wanted me around. I pushed the letter further back in the drawer. "This time," I said aloud, mostly to myself, "I won't chase them. Narina didn't speak. She just nodded, like she'd been waiting years to hear me say that. I glanced out the kitchen window. The sun was higher now, stretching across the fence in long gold bands. Morning was giving way to noon. Time to start setting up the space, ordering extra chairs, or maybe fewer. I looked back down at my list. The names weren't long, but they were solid. And suddenly, that felt like enough. Everyone was somewhere else that day. The sky burned too blue that afternoon, the kind of brightness that felt performative, like the universe was throwing a party I wasn't invited to. After I finished taping the last balloon to the fence post, I stepped back, brushed my palms on my jeans, and took a breath. It wasn't much, just a few strings of lights, folding chairs in mismatched colors, and a modest cake chilling in the fridge. But it was mine and Narina's, and a few people who had RSVP'd not out of obligation but because they genuinely liked me. While I waited for the first guest to arrive, I made the mistake of opening my phone. It was like being sucker punched. There they were, Maris, Thane, Junia, and even my Aunt Verna, grinning like a glossy Christmas postcard. They stood in a sun-drenched backyard in Kansas, gathered around a grill, red Solo cups in hand, arms slung around each other like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. Someone had tagged the photo. The caption burned hotter than the coals in their barbecue. "Real family doesn't forget where they came from." No mention of me. Not even a passive-aggressive "wish you were here." Just them, smiling, posting, pretending the day didn't mark something in my life they once claimed mattered. I stared at the photo until the screen blurred. Then I locked my phone and shoved it under a couch cushion like it was contaminated. They weren't just absent. They were somewhere else. Deliberately, publicly, happily, somewhere else. This wasn't new. The rejection had just never been this loud. Last Christmas, the whole family sat by the fireplace exchanging gifts. When it came time for mine, Maris handed me a squishy, misshapen sweater in a shade of oatmeal that looked like it had been pulled from the lost and found bin of a retirement home. She gave a smile too wide and said, "You've always liked practical things." Then, before I could even thank her, she turned to Junia and held out a velvet box with a wink. Inside was a perfume bottle, designer, gold-trimmed, imported. "Smells like success," Maris said. "You deserve it." Junia had barely peeled the wrapper off before the next gift appeared, a wallet, sleek and high-end, the kind you don't carry in your purse so much as you let it casually peek from the top to be admired. Why not me? I'd wanted to ask, but I knew better. The answer had already been rehearsed. "Calla, that kind of thing just doesn't suit you." Translation: You're not polished enough. You're not graceful like her. You're not worth the investment. It was always that way. If we both asked for the same thing, Junia got it. I got the speech. Even when we were kids, if she cried, someone rushed in with a Band-Aid and a cookie. When I cried, "You're being too sensitive." Over time, I stopped asking. I stopped hoping. And more dangerously, I started believing them. By the time guests began trickling into the backyard, I had put on my best face. I laughed. I refilled drinks. I complimented someone's earrings like I meant it. But when I ducked into the kitchen for a moment alone, I saw the cake I had bought for myself. Small, simple vanilla with pale yellow frosting. The kind a kid might pick out for their imaginary party. I sliced into it alone. Not because I was sad, but because no one else had bothered to remember this day mattered. And as I sat on the back step, fork in hand, I thought, if they could smile like that on the day they left me behind, if they could raise their glasses and post about real family without blinking, then maybe I didn't need to question anymore if I was the one who broke something. Because maybe, just maybe, I never belonged in the picture in the first place. I didn't cry that night. I didn't spiral or rage. Instead, I drafted a new invite list, one I would use from now on. I started with the people who showed up. Not perfectly, not with grand gestures, but consistently. The neighbor who brought extra folding chairs without being asked. Narina, who managed the playlist and made everyone feel like they belonged. My coworker Lila, who arrived with 2 bottles of wine and stories that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. I didn't leave any blank seats this time. I didn't write names in pencil. I didn't hope anyone would show up out of guilt. For the first time, I planned a future that didn't include apologies I was tired of begging for. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. As laughter bubbled from the back porch and someone called my name to join the group photo, I realized I hadn't looked at my phone in hours. I had stopped waiting, and I felt more full than I had in years. When silence turns into a show, it was late morning, and the dishes from last night's gathering still sat stacked in the sink. I had planned to clean them after finishing a few emails, but instead I found myself scrolling. It was mindless, something between delay and denial. That's when a notification lit up my phone. Sable had messaged me on Instagram. "Have you seen this yet? Junia's out of pocket." I clicked the link without expecting much. Probably some cryptic quote about loyalty or broken families, which was Junia's favorite kind of digital sermon. But this wasn't cryptic. It was calculated. The video started with her in faux tears, those silent, shaking shoulders that said more than real crying ever could. She stared into the camera, her voice low but steady. Some people throw parties not because they're loved, but because they're scared of being alone. The screen cut to a slow pan of a birthday cake, clearly not mine, and Junia's smug expression returned just in time for her punchline. "It's giving. Desperation." Hashtags followed. #TruthHurts, #family. First #fake people music played in the background. Sultry, mocking. It was a Taylor Swift instrumental, ironic in the cruelest way. I didn't throw my phone or yell. I didn't even curse. I just sat back in my chair and let the humiliation settle over me like a second skin. It wasn't new, just louder. I hit save on the video, downloaded it, forwarded it to Orson with no caption. By now he knew what silence meant. By mid-afternoon I called my mother. I didn't want to, but sometimes dignity requires confrontation, not avoidance. She answered on the second ring. "Calla? I'm assuming you've seen what Junia posted." Pause. Then came the rehearsed sigh. "Oh, honey, she didn't mean you." I waited. Maris continued. "She's been going through a lot. You know how sensitive she is." She literally mimicked me. The setting, the wording, it was about me. Maris's breath hitched. I could already imagine the performance gearing up. "I am so tired of this," she said, voice cracking. "I try so hard to keep peace and all I get is blame. Maybe if you didn't always push us away, Junia wouldn't act out." "And maybe," I said, tone flat, "if you stopped justifying cruelty, you'd see where the rot is." Her sobs got louder. "I'm your mother, Calla. I carried you, fed you, gave up everything, and now I'm just an inconvenience to you?" I let the silence stretch. Her crying filled the space between us like fog, thick, obscuring. "You're not an inconvenience," I said, calm and sharp. "You're a manipulator. And I'm not falling for it." She hung up. I stared at my phone, not out of hurt but clarity, the kind that comes when you finally call a thing by its name. Orson swung by after work with Thai food in that steady way of his. We ate on the porch. He didn't bring it up. He never did until I did. "I saw the video," he said finally. "You okay?" I nodded, lips tight. "I'm done reacting." He tilted his head. "That's not like you." "I know." I set down my chopsticks. "But I'm done giving them fuel. This isn't about being right anymore. It's about protecting what's left of my sanity." I showed him the folder I'd started on my laptop, labeled "The Truth, No Edits." Inside were screenshots, videos, messages, every gaslight and guilt trip I'd saved, not for revenge, for record, for myself, in case I ever questioned what I lived through. He didn't say much, just nodded. It was enough. That night, I didn't post any cryptic responses or vague subtweets. I didn't defend myself in the group chat, where half of them watched in silence. I didn't tell Narina what happened. I just kept building that folder. Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do isn't to shout. It's to document. And from that day on, I stopped giving them anything to misquote, not just emotionally robbed. By the end of that weekend, the noise had died down. No more subtweets, no more whispered comments passed through friends of friends. I hadn't looked at my phone in 2 days, and honestly, it felt like a detox I didn't know I needed. The silence from them wasn't peace, it was pause. But I was learning to make space for my own quiet. On Monday, Orson and I sat on the back porch, sipping watered-down lemonade. He was half listening to a podcast and half watching me scroll through my email. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. We'd gotten good at silent observation. But then he pointed to a flimsy flyer that had come in the mail. "Hey, why would we get this ad? It's for a luxury spa in Tacoma. You been hiding a secret weekend away?" I took the flyer and laughed out of reflex. I barely splurge on conditioner. You think I booked a facial package? But something about the print caught my eye. The last 4 digits of the card listed under the customer ID weren't familiar, yet the name was mine. I pulled out my laptop and opened my credit monitoring app. What started as curiosity turned into dread. 3 new credit cards had been opened in my name within the last 4 months. The balances? 1 nearing max. All of them unfamiliar vendors. Boutique jewelry, high-end hair tools, a luxury pet spa. I didn't say anything to Orson right away. I just got up, went inside, and sat at the kitchen island. The kitchen light flickered a little above me, one of those slow blinks that made you feel like you were in a thriller movie. I didn't panic. I opened a private browser window, typed, "How to report fraudulent identity use," and started reading. There was a dull pressure behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I created a new folder in my email titled Theft, and I began. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from the kind of fury that wears silk gloves. I kept reviewing the vendor names. One of them, Crested Lane Jewelry, matched a brand my mother had once tagged in a photo online, a post of a bracelet with a caption that read, "For the woman who deserves everything." I opened her page, that same bracelet, worn in a selfie, time-stamped exactly 3 weeks after the card was opened. I felt a chill, not the kind that comes from cold, but from clarity. The next morning, I was brushing my teeth when a new email notification popped up. The subject line read, "Let's talk, just us girls." From Maris. I didn't open it immediately. I stared at it as the foam in my mouth went flat and bitter. Only after rinsing and sitting down at the kitchen table did I click. "Sweetheart," the message began, "I hate how tense things have gotten. We're family, and family should always come back together. I've been under some financial pressure lately. Nothing huge, just a couple things piling up. If you could help with the electric bill, I'd feel so seen and supported. It'd mean the world. I know you care. I raised you better than this tension." There it was, the bait wrapped in silk. I didn't reply. I forwarded the message into another folder. Proof, manipulation. Then I turned off notifications for her account entirely. That night, Orson noticed I wasn't reading, just sitting. "What's going through your head?" he asked. I didn't look up. "Do you remember what you said when we first got together?" He blinked. "Which part?" "That I needed to stop forgiving people just because I understood them." He smiled, then nodded. "Yeah, that still stands?" I closed the laptop and reached for my phone. "I'm calling a lawyer," I said. "Not for drama, just for clarity." By the end of the week, I had a virtual appointment with a consumer rights attorney based in Portland. She didn't gasp or clutch her pearls. She said, "It happens more often than you think, especially when parents think they still own a piece of their adult kids." The words hit like glass on tile. I wasn't devastated. I was done. Done with rationalizing theft as misunderstanding. Done with calling betrayal just how she is. This wasn't emotional neglect anymore. It was paper trails and forged consent. And if they came reaching again, it wouldn't be for a hug. It would be to grab what wasn't theirs. "Next time they reach for my name," I told Orson as we washed dishes that night, "it'll cut them." He nodded, handed me a towel, then sharpened the edge. And I did. The folders on my desktop weren't just files now. They were armor. They weren't done trying. But now, neither was I. The invitation came wrapped in familiarity. My mother's voice on the other end of the line, all silk and softness. "I'm making dinner this Saturday," she said. "Just us girls. No drama, I swear. I just want to see my daughter." She didn't say make things right. She didn't say I'm sorry. Just see my daughter. As if that alone could reset the last 3 decades. As if a pot roast could mend the kind of fractures lawyers were starting to look at. I didn't answer right away. Orson was making tea in the kitchen when I hung up. "Let me guess," he said, sliding me a mug. "She wants peace over pie." I gave a thin smile. "She wants something. She always does." He didn't try to dissuade me when I told him I'd go. He just said, "Then go, but keep both eyes open, and don't eat anything without a receipt." Saturday arrived like a storm that didn't want to commit. The clouds rolled in halfway, but left just enough sun to give the illusion of calm. I wore navy slacks and a white blouse. No jewelry, no softness. I didn't want anything for them to compliment. When I walked into my parents' house, I knew within seconds it wasn't just family. There were second cousins I hadn't seen in years, a great aunt from Topeka, even Junia's college roommate who once said I had a cold vibe. The dining table was dressed like a wedding venue. Candles, matching name cards, floral centerpieces that reeked of performance. My mother greeted me with open arms I didn't step into. "You look thin," she said. "Sit. We have your favorite, roasted Brussels sprouts." I sat, ate quietly, endured the shallow chatter, waited. Halfway through the lemon meringue pie, she leaned in and whispered, "Come out back. Just you and me, sweetheart." The patio was empty. The air smelled of lilac and manipulation. She pulled out a manila envelope and held it like it weighed nothing. "This isn't a big deal," she began, voice honey-sweet. "It's just a little document. Something to help your father and me cover a loan. It's not even in your name. Just a co-signature." I didn't even look at it. "You brought me here," I said slowly. "Dressed a dinner table like a ceasefire, just so I'd be too polite to say no in front of your audience." Her smile faltered. "I didn't want to do this over the phone," she said. "No, you wanted the show." The silence between us was brittle. "You always make things harder than they need to be, Calla. And you always think guilt is a contract." I walked back inside, smiled at the table, sat down like nothing happened. The next morning, I posted a single paragraph on Facebook. "It's wild how often love looks like a fancy dinner followed by a signature request. If your affection comes with paperwork, I'm out, forever. No names, no accusations. But by lunch I had over 70 views from family members. No likes, no comments. Just a trail of digital footprints leading into their own discomfort. Junia didn't message me, but she unfollowed me. Cousin Renee sent a sunflower emoji. Aunt Meg left the family group chat. That night Orson made pasta. I sat on the couch, legs folded, rereading my post like it belonged to someone bolder than I felt. "They didn't fight back," I said. "They're regrouping," he replied. "You weren't supposed to tell your side." "Well," I said, taking a bite of spaghetti, "that's too damn bad." I opened a new folder on my laptop, labeled it Declaration 1. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't begging. I was documenting. I was stating. This was no longer a feud. It was a record. Let them pretend they didn't know. Let them talk in whispers behind screens. They tried manipulation, then guilt. And now? Now they were coming for my dignity. They tried guilt. Next, they chose shame. The next morning, I opened my laptop with the kind of stillness that only comes after a storm. Not because the wind had died, but because I'd braced for another hit. I checked my notifications out of habit, not expectation, and that's when I saw it. A private message from 80. An old high school friend who hadn't spoken to me in years, her name popping up now like a bad omen. "Hey," she wrote. "This might be none of my business, but I think you should see this." Below it was a link to a low-res video, uploaded to a barely used family account that I didn't even know still existed. I clicked. It started on a backyard deck I recognized. Aunt Margot's place in Topeka. A circle of plastic lawn chairs, a folding table draped with a floral sheet, and at the center, a large yellow bowl filled with water. My mother, my Aunt Junia, and a few of the cousins stood around it. Margot raised her voice dramatically, as if performing on a reality show. "Today we cleanse our family of betrayal, of disloyalty, of cold-hearted separation masked as independence." She dipped her fingers into the bowl, flicked water toward the group. Some of it landed on Unia's cheek. She laughed. Mom didn't look solemn. She looked smug. Someone in the background clapped. The video ended with Junia saying, "Amen to family who actually stays loyal." I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't scream. I just stared. the kind of frozen where your bones forget how to be part of your body. Then I downloaded the clip and added it to the folder labeled Evidence Rituals. I didn't feel baptized. I felt burned. That evening, I pulled out my budget sheets, opened the spreadsheet I hadn't touched in months. Rows and rows of transaction history blinked back at me. Venmo transfers to Junia for textbooks, Zelle payments to Maris for emergency bills, receipts for pharmacy runs, and a dozen lines just marked family support. The total for the past 12 months was $12,484.21. 12,000. Gone. I added one more line. Date. Today. Note. Finalized. Then I opened a blank email. To Maris, Junia, Margot, Thane. Subject. Update. Effective immediately, I will no longer be providing any financial support. Do not contact me for money. Attached. FinalLedger.pdf. No extra lines. No explanations. No apologies. I hit send. Then I took a deep breath and didn't exhale until I closed the browser. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and for the first time in years, they didn't tremble with second-guessing. Dinner that night was quiet. Orson made grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind of meal we defaulted to when life felt heavy and dumb. He set a bowl in front of me. You didn't owe them any of it. I nodded, dipping the sandwich, watching the cheese stretch and tear. I know. You never had to pay for love that wasn't real. That one hit harder. I swallowed too fast and coughed, waving off his concern. Do you think they'll come after me for real now? I asked, half joking, half expecting him to say yes. He shrugged. They already were. Now they just know you're not going to stand there while they pick your pockets and call it affection. I nodded slowly. They baptized themselves in plastic bowls. Yeah, he chuckled. You baptized your damn self in receipts and boundaries. That made me smile. It was bitter, but it was real. I went back to my desk and renamed the folder. The Truth, No More Mercy. Inside it, the ritual video sat beside the financial spreadsheet, an archive of sins dressed in Sunday clothes. For years, they'd taught me to confuse silence with grace. But grace doesn't mean surrender. Grace doesn't mean keep giving until you're empty. Grace sometimes is saying, no more. So I stopped, and for the first time I didn't feel empty. I felt like someone finally closing a leak that had been draining me for decades. Later that night, I stared at the ceiling and waited. Waited for the regret, for the panic, for the inevitable voice inside me that always whispered, you'll miss them. It didn't come. Instead, I heard Orson breathing steady beside me. I heard the quiet hum of the fridge. I felt the stillness of a home that wasn't built on guilt. I wasn't proud, not yet, but I wasn't ashamed either. And that was new. The cost of their silence just went up. I had just finished folding laundry, something grounding, repetitive, safe, when the call came in. The name on the screen wasn't familiar, but the area code was Portland, and something in my stomach tightened like it already knew this would be different. Miss Callakeen? The voice asked. This is Claire Rasmussen from Perkins & Rowe, legal counsel. The last time I heard a sentence begin like that, it was a scam call trying to collect on an overdue parking ticket that never existed. But Claire sounded real, measured, heavy, but not hesitant. I'm calling in regard to an inquiry we received through our identity fraud division, she said. Your name appears on a financial application filed at Kestrel Credit Union. It was processed last fall. I hadn't applied for anything last fall, Claire continued. We reviewed the physical documents. Your social security number was included. So was your signature. My throat went dry. I hadn't signed anything for anyone in over a year. Did you say signature? I asked. It bears strong resemblance to your handwriting, she confirmed. But upon analysis, we believe there's clear indication of forgery. My fingers were already moving, grabbing a pen, scribbling on the back of a receipt. Filed by who? We can't legally disclose that unless you choose to press charges, but we have enough to file a criminal complaint, if you wish to move forward. I stared at the wall, the beige paint blurring into noise. I already knew who did it. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a stranger who guessed my social security number and practiced my loops and slants. It was family. More precisely, it was someone I had once believed would never go that far. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I said, "Please send everything you can to my email. I'll consider next steps." Claire's voice softened. "I know this is hard." I almost laughed. "You have no idea." When I hung up, I didn't cry, didn't scream. I didn't call Orson or Narina. I just sat in the quiet and repeated one sentence in my head like a metronome. They didn't just lie to me, they used me. By the end of that same day, my inbox was a battlefield. First, a message from a college friend, Jasmine, who now worked in branding. She forwarded a screenshot from Junia's most recent collab, a sponsorship for a wellness skincare line. "They dropped her," Jasmine wrote. "Apparently the brand team did a background scrub, found her shady TikTok, and your public response. Said it didn't align with their values." Right below it was a second message from a former coworker of Verna's. "Just thought you should know," it read. "HR opened a probe into Verna today. Word is, someone flagged her for misusing company email to circulate that weird video about spiritual cleansing. Not cool when you're a manager." I blinked. Twice. No text from Junia, no calls from Verna, no apology from Maris, of course not. They weren't sorry they used me. They were sorry they got caught. I leaned back in my chair and opened the Truth, No More Mercy folder. I added 2 new subfolders, Legal Prep and Collateral Damage. I wasn't out for blood, but I wasn't about to bandage their wounds either, not when they'd walked barefoot into glass they laid themselves. That night, as the rain started tapping lightly against the kitchen window, Orson pulled out 2 mugs and filled them with tea. "How bad?" he asked, sliding mine across the table. "Forgery," I said simply. His jaw clenched. "They actually—" "Yep." He didn't ask if I was pressing charges. He just waited, and I answered slowly, "Not yet." His brow lifted. "I want them to sit in it first," I said. "The shame, the silence, the knowledge that I know, and that I'm not running." He nodded once. "You want them to unravel." "No," I corrected, sipping my tea. "I want them to see themselves clearly. No excuses, no fake apologies, just reflection." A pause. "You always think clearer when you're angry," he said, almost admiringly. I smiled. Not warm, not cruel, just tired. "It's not anger, not anymore. It's math. It's record-keeping." My laptop sat open beside me. I clicked through my folders, then paused on a blank Word doc and typed out the heading, Victim Impact Statement Draft, not because I'd made a decision, but because someday soon, I might. The next morning, as I scrolled aimlessly through local news with a cup of stale coffee, I found an op-ed about accountability in family businesses. It wasn't about me, but it might as well have been, because one sentence stood out like it had been written just for me. "Silence isn't protection, it's complicity." That's when I knew they were no longer just toxic. Now, they were dangerous. I didn't plan the moment it happened. There was no dramatic music swelling in the background, no inner monologue about courage. It was just a quiet Tuesday morning, sunlight slanting across my kitchen tiles, when I clicked Create Post. Not a draft, not a journal entry, a public post. I titled it, What Family First Really Looked Like. Below the title, I started attaching, not opinions, not memories blurred by bias, just evidence. A scan of the bank statement with my name tied to a credit card I never applied for. The forged signature, side by side with a document I had signed years ago. Screenshots of the TikTok Junia had posted mocking lonely narcissists who throw themselves pity parties. The email from Maris, asking for money to cover this one last bill, right after the emotional landmines. A blurry photo from the BBQ, where they toasted marshmallows under string lights without a single mention of my name. The video of Aunt Margot flinging water from a salad bowl in some half-serious, fully petty cleansing ceremony. I added a caption. "I'm not looking for revenge, just resolution. This is what family has looked like for me. This is my side. I deserve to say it." I read it twice, made one small edit to punctuation, then hit post. That was it. I got up, made myself coffee, watered the plant Narina gave me 2 birthdays ago. I didn't check my phone for an hour. By the time I did, it was chaos. The post had been shared nearly 700 times. There were comments from people I didn't know, messages from friends I hadn't spoken to in years. "I had no idea you went through this." My sister did the same to me, Thank you for speaking up. This post is going to save someone. Maybe me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stared at the screen, my hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but release. A few quiet pings came through later that night. A private message from my cousin Lenny. I always wondered, none of it ever made sense. Another from a friend of Verna's. She used to talk like you owed them something. Now I know what she meant. Someone I didn't recognize at all. I screenshotted everything before they take it down. You're not alone. Then came the counter-strike. Maris didn't tag me, of course. She never does when she wants to maintain her image. But the post was unmistakably about me. A photo of her with Junia on a park bench, all soft edges and fall filters. The caption, "No parent is perfect, but love is loving your kids even when they abandon you, even when they twist the story. Grace is for everyone." It garnered hearts, hugs, and the usual comments from her circle. Mostly people who hadn't seen my post yet. But not everyone played along. Aunt Elise wrote, "Grace doesn't cover fraud." A guy named Caleb, who I vaguely remembered from childhood summer barbecues, said, "It's funny how nobody refuted what was posted. They just cried louder." Within hours, Maris disabled comments. Then she made the post visible to friends only. She never messaged me. Junia never apologized. Verna apparently took a digital detox. And still, I didn't reply. I didn't post again. Not because I had nothing left to say, but because I'd already said what mattered. The truth didn't need my defense. It stood on its own. That evening, Orson poured me a glass of wine and asked, "How do you feel now?" I considered it. "Lighter," I said, "and heavier at the same time." He nodded like he understood. Healing's like that. It doesn't always come wrapped in peace. Sometimes it arrives wearing armor. "I didn't do it to ruin them," I said quietly. "I did it to stop hiding." He raised his glass. "To that." The toast wasn't loud, just a soft clink in a quiet room. I spent that night answering a few messages, flagging a couple of hateful ones, and turning off my notifications. Then I curled up on the couch with a blanket I bought myself after Christmas last year. The first holiday I spent alone on purpose. That blanket had become something sacred. Not because it was warm, but because no one had to approve of it. I didn't have to earn it. Neither did my truth. And for once, I felt like that was enough. I closed my eyes, not with fear or guilt or second-guessing, but with a breath that felt whole. And with every truth exposed, I started becoming someone new. I woke up to gray light leaking in through the blinds, and a sense of stillness so deep it felt like something had shifted in the night, quietly, but permanently. The kind of shift you can't undo, even if you wanted to. I didn't feel the twitch to scroll through other people's lives or scan for damage control. Instead, I walked to the kitchen barefoot, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood at the window watching the neighbor's dog chase a squirrel like the world hadn't cracked open the day before. But it had, and not in a violent, explosive way. It cracked like old ice finally giving way beneath pressure that had built for decades. I sipped my coffee and opened my laptop. Not because I had something to prove, but because I didn't have anything to hide. There it was, my post, still pinned, still visible, still mine. The truth was still out in the open, and I wasn't scrambling to explain it. I wasn't checking who had liked it, or who had stayed silent. I wasn't waiting for a phone call that wouldn't come. I had said what needed saying, and they had heard it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of implications, of reputations reevaluated, of quiet conversations happening behind closed doors. Doors I no longer tried to knock on. Maris hadn't reached out. Not with a message, not with a voicemail, not even with another cryptic post. Maybe she was licking her wounds. Or maybe, for once, she was actually listening. That morning, I received an email from the identity fraud lawyer, Claire. "Calla," it read, "I wanted to update you that the documentation is complete. The evidence of forgery is conclusive. No further signatures or cooperation are required from you at this point, unless you choose to proceed with a formal complaint." I read it twice, then minimized the window. I wasn't ready to press the button yet, but I wasn't scared to anymore. I thought about everything I'd uploaded. The receipts, the bank statements, the email Maris sent me asking for money while calling it healing, the staged cleansing video, the TikTok, The backyard BBQ they hosted on my birthday, tagging it #family1st. I hadn't embellished. I hadn't fabricated. I had simply told the truth and let it speak for itself. And it did. The comments were still rolling in. Some supportive, some stunned, a few accusatory. But most were from people who recognized the shape of my pain in their own lives. People who said, "I thought I was the only one," or "You just described my mother," or simply, "Thank you." I hadn't meant to start a movement, but sometimes truth becomes contagious. Later that afternoon, I went to the community garden. The sun was peeking through in patches, and I needed to feel something grow that wasn't resentment. As I dug my hands into the soil, planting early tomato starters, I found myself humming a tune I didn't recognize. Maybe something Orson played in the car once, or maybe something my spirit had been holding in silence. Across from me, a woman named Lila from my volunteer group waved. She didn't ask how I was. She just passed me a trowel and said, "The earth's finally soft enough. It's a good day to put things down." I smiled. Yeah, it really is. That evening back home, I made dinner without rushing. I didn't burn the garlic. I didn't overcook the pasta. I poured myself a glass of wine. Not because I needed to forget, but because I wanted to celebrate remembering who I was before all the bargaining and begging. At the table, Orson raised an eyebrow as I served the food. "You look taller." "Maybe I let go of something heavy," I said, smiling. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he asked, "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" I shook my head. "I think they'll justify, they'll spin, they'll perform. But apologize? That would require admitting they weren't the victims. Would it help if they did?" I considered the question, then answered, "Only if it was real. But even then, it's not the apology I needed, it's the boundary." After dinner, I went back to my laptop and reopened my folder. I didn't add anything new. I didn't need to. But I did create one last document, a personal one. A kind of ending I hadn't allowed myself before. It was titled, "Final Letter Not to Be Sent." I wrote it like a release, not forgiveness, just release. "Dear Maris," I began. I kept it short. 3 paragraphs. No anger, no pleading. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I was stepping out of the loop. The one where I tried, they took, and I twisted myself into pieces just to keep a place at a table that only served guilt. I saved the file and closed the laptop. Healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp, like cutting a rope that's been around your neck. But when the rope falls, you breathe like it's the first time. I looked out the window. The sky had turned lavender. A breeze moved through the trees like a sigh of relief. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. They didn't get to be the end of my story. I did. Looking back, I wish I could tell my younger self one thing. You don't have to keep bleeding just because someone else keeps handing you the knife. We're raised to believe family means forever. That forgiveness is automatic. That blood outweighs harm. But healing, real healing, isn't about pretending something didn't break. It's about finally saying, "This hurt me, and I won't carry it quietly anymore." And the moment I stopped hiding behind shame, the moment I let truth speak louder than obligation, something shifted. Not in them, in me. So if you're out there wondering if your pain is valid, if your story is bad enough to walk away, let me say this clearly. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need a scar to prove you were cut. I'm not here to tell you what justice should look like in your life, but I am saying silence isn't healing. And love without respect? That's just control in a nicer outfit. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you were told you could never leave? What did it teach you about love, truth, or even yourself? Drop a comment below. Type 1 if this story hit close to home, or let me know where you're watching from. And if this wasn't your cup of tea, I'd still love to hear why. Every voice adds something. And hey, if this video made you feel seen, supported, or just a little braver, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. There's more truth to tell, and you deserve to hear it. Thanks for being here, really.
You don't have a ticket. Poor people like you can't possibly appreciate music. I found myself at a classical concert venue thanks to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, but somehow my ticket had gone missing. The sneers and judgmental stares were palpable. How dare someone like you try to mingle with us? Go home. I was being blatantly discriminated against. But just as I was feeling utterly defeated, my mother-in-law stepped in to help. Little did my sister-in-law know her own world was about to collapse. My name is Betty. I've loved music since I was a child. Being surrounded by the melodies that moved me was pure joy. But I was shy and introverted, so I mostly played with toy instruments alone. My family wasn't wealthy, so music lessons were out of the question. When I was in elementary school, I eagerly joined the wind ensemble and stuck with it through high school. However, in group settings, I always felt like I was dragging everyone down, which became a source of trauma for me. It made me uncomfortable in group situations, even outside of music. I found peace playing an instrument alone, often retreating to a quiet corner of the music room. One day, my music teacher noticed me and introduced me to a well-known musician who recognized a rare talent in me. Unfortunately, my parents, due to our financial situation, couldn't support my passion. I always thought that if I could get proper training, I might overcome my fear of playing in a group. But because of our circumstances, that was never an option. Eventually, I gave up on the idea of pursuing music professionally and settled for enjoying it as a hobby. When I got my first paycheck as an adult, I splurged on a ticket to a classical concert. I was a big fan of a particular family of musicians that I deeply admired. The tickets were expensive, even for the worst seats, but I thought this might be my only chance, so I went for it, with no regrets. The experience was worth every penny, and I was completely satisfied. I'd love to attend more concerts, but with other financial responsibilities, like contributing to my family and saving for a wedding, I can't afford expensive tickets regularly. As for marriage, I'm just waiting to meet the right person. After working for 3 years, my parents started hinting that I should think about my future. Back in their day, people usually got married in their late 20s or early 30s. My mom married my dad around that time too. Nowadays, personal choice is valued more, and my parents understand this, so they don't pressure me. But the lack of pressure sometimes makes me feel like I need to hurry up and get married. Despite having a job, I'm still shy and introverted. I've been invited to group dates by female coworkers, but I never really talked to anyone. Just considering going on a group date was progress for me, so I decided to start with online conversations through a dating app. That's where I met a guy who loves music just as much as I do. We hit it off online, and after exchanging messages for a while, he asked to meet up. When we finally met, I was stunned to realize he was a member of the famous musical family I admired so much. People might wonder why I didn't recognize him from his profile picture, but who would think it was really him? His name was common enough that it didn't raise any suspicions. I figured if he knew I was a fan, he might turn me down. I kept it a secret at first, but eventually I decided to be honest. I told him about my shyness and how uncomfortable I am in large groups. He reassured me, saying he felt the same way. The more we talked, the more we connected, and soon enough, we decided to get married. When I finally confessed that I was a fan, he was genuinely honored, his smile radiant. Everything was going smoothly, and soon we were set to meet his parents. His family was usually busy touring, but there was one day when they would all be home. I nervously entered his house, waiting to meet his parents while his sister-in-law entertained me. She casually mentioned, "As you might know, we're a musical family. If you can't at least play the violin, you're not really part of the family, you know." I was in trouble. I had never touched a violin in my life. The school's band club didn't even have violins. Just when I thought I was doomed, his parents stepped in, saying, "If she has musical skills, any instrument will do." But his sister-in-law insisted on the violin. Then he spoke up, "Mom, don't we have a practice violin we can borrow? Can you give Betty and me some time for a quick lesson?" His mother agreed, smiling. "Why not? It'll be interesting to see what you can do in an hour. A string instrument and a violin at that." I wasn't confident I could even make a sound in just an hour. But he reassured me, "Trust me, Betty, you'll be fine." I took his word for it and even asked my mother-in-law if I could borrow her violin. It was my first time holding a violin, let alone playing one. Honestly, I was terrible. But "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" was a song I knew well, so I focused on putting emotion into my playing since my technique was non-existent. "You're doing great, Betty," my mother-in-law encouraged me. "Just making a sound on the violin is hard. You've come a long way, especially considering it's your first time. You're giving the music the respect it deserves." My husband also praised me, saying, "You move me," and gave me a big round of applause. The only one who looked unimpressed was my sister-in-law. I guess she expected me to embarrass myself and never imagined I'd actually be liked by her mother. And so I was accepted into this musical family and officially became a married woman. Though my relationship with my father-in-law and mother-in-law was good, a problematic dynamic with my sister-in-law began to emerge. She started picking on me, making snide remarks, and harassing me. She was very pushy and always retaliated if I talked back. But I didn't have the courage to stand up to her, which seemed to irritate her even more. The harassment intensified when the family was on tour. On days when my sister-in-law didn't have performances due to the tour schedule, it was just the two of us left at home. Although we had a housekeeper, my sister-in-law insisted that I should cook. After tasting my cooking, she would always say it was awful and poorly made. Even when she told me to remake the meal, she'd throw it away right in front of me, saying she didn't want to eat it anymore. She even spilled soup intentionally and did things like stepping on the small of my back or putting her foot on my head. Even during family dinners, she'd call me to the bathroom, saying, "When will you learn proper table manners? I don't want to share a table with someone like you." While my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law thought I was improving, my sister-in-law would say, "I can't believe you can't even manage that." I didn't think I was as ill-mannered as she claimed, but the sadness and frustration of not being acknowledged made me feel pathetic. After she left, I'd hide and wipe away my tears. Then my husband would come, saying I was worried when you didn't come back. "Wait, why are you crying? Is she giving you a hard time? Don't hold back, tell me everything." What a sweet man. I almost confessed, but I heard the joyful laughter from the family gathering and didn't want to upset him just for me. I thought if I could be patient, it would keep the peace. "No, it's not like that. I get along with her," I said. But he persisted. "But you were crying." I quickly covered, I was just so happy to be married and accepted by everyone. I couldn't help but cry. My husband seemed to ponder briefly but soon agreed, "Yeah, you're right." He then took my hand, saying, "Let's continue with dinner," and led me back to the dining table. It seemed we'd finally get some downtime with my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who even suggested going to a classical music concert as part of welcoming me. Listening to various performers and interpretations from different conductors can be enlightening, they said. They asked me which concert I'd like to attend, so I recommended one they had previously enjoyed. We found out they could possibly get tickets through a connection they had, but my sister-in-law insisted on handling the tickets, claiming she had some pull with the people involved. On the day of the event, we arrived at the venue, and my sister-in-law headed over to the staff entrance. After a brief chat with the staff, she returned with something that looked like tickets. One by one, she handed them out to everyone, except me. "People who are broke wouldn't understand music anywhere, right?" she sneered. "Excuse me, you and I are on different levels. Know your place and go home. You don't belong here." My husband offered to ask if there were any spare tickets available, but I didn't want to worsen my sister-in-law's mood and make things uncomfortable for everyone else, so I decided it was best to leave and started pulling my husband away. But then my mother-in-law, who had been silent, intervened. "Wait, Betty, you're not the one who needs to leave. It's her who's always mistreating you," she said, pointing at my sister-in-law. "Why me?" my sister-in-law protested. "Listening to music has nothing to do with being rich or poor. People have their own ways to enjoy it. It's not for others to interfere," my mother-in-law scolded. Sister-in-law, who had always been cold to me, shot back, "You think I don't know? It's obvious something's been going on behind my back." "That's not true," my mother-in-law responded calmly. "But I find your envious heart far more impoverished." My brother-in-law, who had been quiet until now, chimed in. "Aren't you always sleeping through concerts? You may not realize it, but it's glaringly obvious." He chuckled, adding, "Sure, you graduated from a music conservatory and won some awards, but you became complacent and stopped improving. If you're going to talk about what music is, then you should first strive to be better yourself." Brother-in-law regretted that he couldn't be more straightforward with his wife about her lacking skills and attitude as a musician, but doing blatant harm to his brother's wife was something he couldn't stomach. You have neither awareness nor ambition as a musician. I think it's time for you to leave our family. I'm tired of supporting someone who shows no promise of growth, he said, seizing the opportunity to finally express his frustration. You're one to talk, old lady, his sister-in-law retorted, her voice dripping with disdain. Your music sense is so outdated I can't even listen to it. It's the sound of someone who caters to the poor. So of course, I'd be thrilled to leave this awful musical family. Her strong words echoed in the room as she declared she would go solo, make a fortune, and prove everyone wrong. I had always thought people like her were incapable of self-reflection, but I didn't expect this level of rage. In the end, she stormed off, throwing a concert ticket on the ground. My mother-in-law calmly picked it up and handed it to me. Let's go, she said, taking my hand, and we walked out together. My second experience with a classical concert was truly moving. Different musicians and conductors bring a unique vibe and structure to the same piece. I marveled at how the same composition could sound so different, discovering new interpretations and learning so much. My mother-in-law seemed to notice my enthusiasm. After the tension between my brother-in-law and sister-in-law reached a boiling point, their marriage eventually ended in divorce. My former sister-in-law hastily organized her solo concert, ignoring advice and overconfidently renting a venue that held 5,000 people. Even popular classical concerts rarely fill such large spaces, so it was no surprise when tickets didn't sell. She ended up buying many herself to make the hall look less empty. Her merchandise sat unsold, leaving her with an overstocked warehouse. Her second solo concert was equally disastrous, attracting only a handful of attendees. Lacking both talent and a likable personality, she became unpopular, and online criticism abounded. Unable to pay her staff or cover other costs, she quickly sank into debt. Attempts at street performances were met with harsh comments like, "You're terrible, stop annoying us," and even resulted in water being thrown at her. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law suggested that I should get professional music training, given my apparent talent. I was both surprised and delighted by the suggestion, though I felt it was a bit late to start learning an instrument, but it felt like an opportunity I had once given up on was presenting itself again, and I couldn't believe it. I was told the choice of instrument was up to me, and I'm considering the violin, especially since my husband has been helping me with it. My mother-in-law found a top-notch instructor who has nurtured many skilled violinists. I even began accompanying the family on their concert tours and helping out behind the scenes. Every day feels blissful as I spend more time with music and feel myself improving. My current dream is to perform a solo, accompanied by my husband on the piano. I'm Madison, 30 years old, and I've been married to Thomas for 5 years now. He proposed to me after we had been dating for a while. Thomas is 2 years younger than I am, and undeniably handsome, with a bit of a reputation as a ladies' man. This reputation sometimes led to tension between us. When he proposed, I couldn't help but voice my concern. "Thomas," I said, "I'm thrilled about your proposal, but there's one thing that's been on my mind." "Oh, what's that?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "Your reputation as a ladies' man. Everyone knows about it." Hearing this, Thomas laughed softly. "That's only because I had never met a woman I truly loved before. But now that I've met you, Madison, I promise there won't be any rumors with other women. Can you trust me?" "Absolutely," I replied. And so we got married. Our wedding took place at a prestigious hotel known for hosting grand celebrations. I wasn't too keen on such a lavish affair, but Thomas's family was well known in society, and they had a tradition of holding weddings at this particular hotel. I had no say in the matter. At the reception, Thomas's family and relatives exuded an air of having lived life to the fullest, while my family was small and modest. My father had died in a car accident when I was young, and I had no siblings, so it was just my mom and a few close relatives. I suggested to my mom that we invite more people to balance out the guest list, but she just laughed it off. Being a lawyer and the head of her own firm, my mom was great at public speaking. Her speech at the reception was praised by many, but I was so embarrassed I wished it would end quickly. The day after the wedding, we left for our honeymoon, touring famous Australian tourist spots for 2 weeks and staying in top-tier hotels. 3 days after we returned, Thomas went back to work. Though he called it work, he was the vice president of his father's company and was set to take over once his father retired. He always came home promptly at 5 o'clock p.m. We lived in a separate house on his parents' property. But this separate house was a spacious 6-bedroom home, complete with a 60-year-old maid who had looked after Thomas for years. I hardly had to do any housework as my only task was preparing dinner. Thomas, probably spoiled growing up in a wealthy family, was very picky, not just about food, but also about people. The maid informed me of his food preferences. He wouldn't touch anything he disliked, but if he loved something, he would want it every day. His absolute favorite was macaroni and cheese. He would eat it at home and even order it when we went out, making meal planning a breeze. About a year after our marriage, Thomas suggested, "How about a 10-day trip to Europe next month? You've never been there, right, Madison?" "I would love to go, but can you take that much time off work, Thomas?" "It's fine, my dad's there, and I don't really do much anyway." "If you're sure, then I'm in," I agreed. "Great. Oh, I want to bring along some friends," Thomas added casually. I was surprised, thinking it would be just the two of us. "Who's coming with us?" "My college junior, Anthony, and his girlfriend. Anthony might even be more handsome than me, and his girlfriend is so cute. I'm quite envious." Thomas laughed. I felt a bit uneasy about another woman joining us. "Another woman is coming." "Yeah, she's just 21, but Anthony really wanted her to come. If you're okay with it, then so am I," he said. Little did I know, this trip would mark the beginning of the end for Thomas and me. The next month, we flew to England. Everything in Europe was new and exciting, and I couldn't stop taking photos on my phone. While Thomas didn't talk much to Anthony, he was very kind to Anthony's girlfriend, Brittany. Once, when Thomas went to the restroom, I struck up a conversation with Anthony. "You're Thomas's junior from college, right?" For some reason, Anthony hesitated before replying, "Ah, yes, I am." I laughed at his response. "You're funny, Anthony. You seem nervous." "No, not at all," he said, but just then, Thomas returned and saw us talking. "Madison, what's going on?" "What are you telling Anthony?" Thomas asked, his tone sharp. "We were just chatting." "Why? Is it wrong for me to talk to Anthony?" I replied, confused by his reaction. "It's not like that," Thomas said, but he seemed to interrupt whenever I spoke to Anthony or his girlfriend, making it hard for us to have a proper conversation. During the trip, Brittany and I once went to the restroom together, and I decided to share my observations with her. "It might sound odd, but it seems like you and Anthony are really close," I said to Brittany, noticing the awkwardness between them. Brittany, clearly taken aback, replied hesitantly, It's my first time traveling abroad, so everything's a bit overwhelming." "While you're here in a foreign country with your boyfriend, try to enjoy it," I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "Thank you," she murmured. The four of us moved on to France, visiting various famous tourist spots. One evening at the hotel restaurant, Brittany was conspicuously absent. "Anthony, where's Brittany?" I asked, noticing her empty seat. She said she'd be a bit late. She should be here soon," he replied, but his tone lacked conviction. Thomas seemed visibly irritated as we waited. After a while, with no sign of Brittany, Thomas abruptly stood up. "I'll go check on her," he said. I thought Anthony should be the one to go, but Thomas was already on his way. 10 minutes passed, and neither Brittany nor Thomas had returned. I turned to Anthony, my concern growing. "What's taking them so long? Is Brittany feeling unwell?" Anthony hesitated, then said, I don't think she was sick or anything. I'll go check on them." When I opened the door to Brittany and Anthony's room, they both seemed to adjust their seating abruptly, which only made me more suspicious. But I remained calm and asked, "What are you two doing here?" Thomas said he was coming to check on Brittany, "But you're both just sitting on the sofa." Nothing's wrong," Brittany said quickly. "I just felt a bit off, so Thomas was checking on me." "Oh, okay. I'll bring Anthony over," I said, trying to hide my growing unease. "Sounds good," Thomas replied, but Brittany remained silent, looking down at the floor. When I brought Anthony back to the room, Brittany stood up, ready to leave. "Oh, are you feeling better now?" I asked her. "I'm fine," she muttered, while Anthony just watched her without saying a word. Our dinner that night was a quiet one, with none of us speaking much. After dinner, we all returned to our rooms. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Thomas, can I ask you something?" I began, noticing how tense he suddenly became. "What is it?" he asked, his voice guarded. "What's the deal between you and Brittany?" "Oh, what do you mean? She's just Anthony's girlfriend," he replied, trying to sound casual. "It doesn't seem like they're close at all," I pointed out. "They're both just quiet people," he said dismissively. "It doesn't seem like they're just quiet. It's like they're not talking at all. You're overthinking things, Madison." "Am I?" "When you were in Brittany's room earlier, and I opened the door, you both seemed startled and adjusted your seating." "Enough. If you keep this up, you'll ruin our trip," Thomas snapped, cutting me off. After that, I didn't press the issue further, but my suspicions only grew. The next day, while we were touring, Thomas and Brittany suddenly disappeared. I searched frantically, but I couldn't find them anywhere. Anthony seemed to be looking too, but he didn't appear genuinely concerned. After about 2 hours, Thomas and Brittany reappeared. "Thomas, where were you?" "Where were you, Madison?" "Brittany and I were looking for you." I was searching everywhere. Anthony didn't seem too worried, though. "Well, what can I say?" Thomas replied evasively. "Brittany, where were you?" I asked, hoping for a straight answer. Brittany just looked down and didn't respond. "Brittany was with me, looking for you and Anthony," Thomas said. "Is that true, Brittany?" I asked, turning to her. She gave a slight nod, but I wasn't convinced. Still, I didn't push further. From then on, Thomas stayed close, but he barely spoke to me for the rest of our European trip. Even when I tried to initiate a conversation, his responses were dismissive. The day after we returned, Thomas took a day off from work, claiming he was tired. "You've had a long vacation. Shouldn't you go to work?" I asked. He replied with a sleepy face, "Oh, I'm good." That moment made me realize how irresponsible he was about his job. The following Friday, just after 5 p.m., Thomas called me. "I won't be coming home tonight," he said bluntly. "Hold on, why?" I asked, alarmed. "You don't need to know every detail," he replied coldly. "You're my husband, Thomas. Of course I have the right to know," I insisted. But he hung up without another word. I was sure it had something to do with another woman, probably Brittany. The next day, Saturday afternoon, Thomas returned home with a lawyer. Without any preamble, the lawyer said, "You owe $50,000 in compensation for adultery." Thomas smirked and added, "Just pay up." I was dumbfounded. Why was this lawyer making such a claim? As I stood there in shock, the lawyer handed me his business card and left with Thomas. "Thomas, if you're leaving, at least explain." I called after him, but he left without a word. I gathered myself and called my mom, using the number on the card. "Mom, are you free?" "What happened?" "This lawyer hired by Thomas just came and demanded $50,000, claiming I committed adultery. I'm so confused." "Did you?" she asked. "Of course not." "Then don't worry." "But he's a lawyer, Mom. Who is he?" I looked at the card again and was shocked to see the name of Mom's law firm written on it. He was a lawyer who belonged there. "Mom, he's from your law firm." Who?" she asked. I told her the name, and she replied, "That man is always taking on dubious cases. Can you ask him to drop the case?" "He might, but Thomas will just hire someone else." "What should I do?" After a pause, Mom said, "I'll handle this for you." "Thank you, Mom. I'll look into it too." Later, Mom called me back. "I figured it all out. Thomas is a terrible man. I'll teach him a lesson," she said, revealing Thomas's devious plans. He had always been a ladies' man, but this was beyond anything I had expected. But maybe I was wrong to marry him. "You did nothing wrong, Madison. So you're okay with divorcing him?" "Absolutely. Let's call Thomas and set up a meeting." "You'll come too, right?" "Of course. I need to give him a piece of my mind. And make sure his lawyer comes too." "I will." I called Thomas and told him we needed to discuss things and to set a date with his lawyer. Misunderstanding my intent, he said, "Oh, finally ready to pay the settlement. I'm all for that discussion. I'll check with my lawyer and call you back." Even though Thomas wasn't short of money, he seemed eager to get the divorce settlement over with. The next day, Thomas called, and we agreed to meet the following Saturday at 2 p.m. Come Saturday, my mom and I went to Thomas's house, where he and his lawyer awaited us. His lawyer arrived a bit late and seemed taken aback upon seeing my mom. Mom addressed the lawyer. "Good to see you're still taking on cases without proper research." "No, not at all. I always do thorough research before accepting a case." "Really? Then can you provide evidence of Madison's alleged affair?" The lawyer, realizing he was cornered, remained silent. Thomas, frustrated, said, "Come on, lawyer, I'm paying you a premium for this." I wasn't informed that the opposing party would be represented by the head of my firm. The lawyer mumbled, clearly rattled. To our surprise, the lawyer quickly excused himself and left. Watching him go, Mom sighed. He's always been like that. I'll have to let him go. Thomas looked defeated. Confronted by Mom for evidence of my supposed affair, he went pale and confessed. "I'm sorry. I made up the story about Madison's affair. I wanted to be with Brittany and lied impulsively." "So Brittany was your affair?" I asked, feeling the sting of betrayal. "Yes, but I found out something about her," Thomas admitted, his voice trembling. "She's living with a boyfriend. They're not married, but he doesn't work and gambles all day." "Really?" I replied, stunned. "Yes, and I suspect they might be after your money," he added, looking devastated. Hearing this, Thomas broke down. Seeing him cry, I felt a pang of sorrow but held back my tears. Through his sobs, Thomas looked up at me. "Madison, I'm truly sorry. I wish we could start over." I was furious. "How dare you? After having an affair, you want to get back with me? Thomas, you have no choice but to divorce me." Thomas, overwhelmed, sobbed uncontrollably. "Why did you bring Brittany on our European trip? It's unthinkable to bring an affair on a trip with your wife." I didn't want to, but Brittany insisted. She had never been to Europe, and I gave in. "So you both were making fun of me. I never intended to mock you, but I understand why you would feel that way." "Was Anthony Brittany's fake boyfriend?" "Yes, he's an employee at my company. He was thrilled to go to Europe on a work trip and share a room with a young woman." "Your company will surely go bankrupt with you as CEO," I remarked coldly. Thomas had no reply. "Thomas will proceed with the divorce," I said firmly. He remained silent, face down. "Last time you demanded $50,000 from me. Now I'm asking for $500,000. You can afford it, right? Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." Mom and I left Thomas's house and returned home. I turned to her. "Thanks for everything, Mom." "It's my job," she said with a smile. "I'll send you the bill." Mom laughed. 3 months later, I officially divorced Thomas, who promptly paid the settlement I demanded. Later, I heard that Thomas, still infatuated with Brittany, went to her house. Her boyfriend was home, and after a chase, caught Thomas outside a nearby store and beat him up, landing Thomas in a hospital for 2 months. Brittany reportedly watched and laughed. Now, I'm in a new relationship and being cautious to avoid past mistakes. My new boyfriend is a kind lawyer from my mom's firm. My husband always looked down on me and refused to cooperate in our married life. He would often remind me that I should be grateful to him, a high earner, while belittling me, a vocational school graduate. One day, after telling me I should appreciate what I had in him, he left home. Later, he asked if I was ready to apologize. I told him, "It's more comfortable without you." My name is Annika, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband, Matthew, through a mutual friend. At the time, I had just graduated from vocational school in the countryside and moved to the city for work. Matthew, who was a city native, offered to show me around. "You must be lost since you're new here. Ask me anything about the place," he said. Grateful for his help, I accepted his offer, especially when I was confused about things like train transfers. Matthew guided me through the city, and I found myself increasingly drawn to him. On his days off, Matthew would take me to popular tourist spots, and we began spending weekends together. Eventually, we started having dinner after work, and it became natural for us to be together. So when he proposed, it felt like the next logical step, and soon we were married. However, after we got married, Matthew's attitude towards me began to change. He started to look down on me, asking, "You're going to keep working after we get married, right?" When I answered that I planned to, given that we had a mortgage to pay, he responded dismissively, "All right, do as you like, but don't slack off on the housework, okay?" I suggested we share the housework since we were both working, but Matthew scoffed at the idea. "Share? Unlike you, a vocational graduate, I have a responsible job. I don't have time for housework," he said. When I pointed out that I worked too, he belittled my job, comparing it to part-time work and implying I was easily replaceable. "My work is far more important than yours," he insisted. Although I disagreed, I didn't want to fight so early in our marriage. I reluctantly took on all the housework as Matthew demanded. I had been living alone for a long time, so I was used to managing household chores. But Matthew's demands only grew more unreasonable. One day, he announced that he would manage all our finances. "I'll give you a monthly allowance for living expenses," he said, handing me just $100. Shocked, I asked if this was just for food, assuming other necessities would be separate. But Matthew was firm. "That's all the money I'm giving you. You can manage with $100 as a housewife, right?" I tried to explain that $100 wasn't enough to cover food, daily necessities, and medical expenses, but Matthew dismissed my concerns. He insisted I could make it work and warned me not to skimp on meals, despite his pickiness about the menu. He would complain if I served anything less than luxurious meals, demanding expensive cuts of meat even though the budget made it impossible. When I asked if we could use some of our savings for living expenses, Matthew grew angry. "The balance is decreasing. I can't increase your allowance," he snapped. When I asked why we weren't saving as much as expected, he avoided the question, suggesting that the $100 I received was still too much. I questioned his spending habits, particularly his late nights out, suspecting it was the cause of our dwindling savings. But Matthew dismissed my concerns, saying his drinking was necessary for business relationships and entertaining. Don't criticize. It became increasingly clear that Matthew was using the money in our joint account however he pleased, without even bothering to check the details. As I looked deeper into our finances, I discovered it wasn't just his drinking habits draining our savings. He was also spending money on his hobbies, justifying it as a break from work, and doing whatever he wanted. No wonder our savings were dwindling. "Hey, the money in our joint account is what we both contributed when we got married, right? Shouldn't we be saving a bit more?" I asked Matthew. He snapped back, "Don't be so noisy. I'm supporting you. You should be grateful to live under a high earner like me." Matthew's salary was $1,500 a month, far from what I consider high. But in his company, he was on the higher end of the pay scale. This inflated his ego, and he convinced himself he was a high earner. "Listen," he continued, "unexpected at the company. I'm juggling many jobs, managing clients, and that's why there are so many entertaining events. It's not my fault the drinking parties have increased. It's just how it is. People are getting laid off left and right, but not me. My competence is needed by the company." His reasoning was entirely selfish, and I finally couldn't hold back any longer. "Let me be clear, $1,500 isn't a high salary by today's standards. For your age, it's actually quite low. And if you're saying you're a high earner, then isn't it just that your company's salary level is low?" "What did you say?" Matthew was furious. "Also, if you're going drinking for work, the company should be covering it as an expense. It's strange that you're paying for it out of pocket." "Well, it's common, isn't it?" he replied defensively. "And those people who quit, were they really laid off due to restructuring?" I pressed. "What do you mean?" Matthew asked, taken aback. "Well, no one explicitly said it's restructuring, but the employees are leaving regularly. Isn't it that everyone hates the company's harsh nature? The salary is low, overtime pay is minimal, and they don't even let you expense business-related drinking. It sounds like your company might be what they call a black company, don't you think?" "What did you say?" Matthew was furious. "People like you who work for low wages without questioning anything are valuable to the company in a way. But don't you think you're being used rather than being relied upon?" I realized I had said too much, but it was too late. Matthew's face turned bright red, and his shoulders began to shake. "You, a country bumpkin and a vocational school graduate, wouldn't understand society. $1,500 is not a low salary. You're just a sore loser." "A sore loser? I saw your pay stub the other day. You only made $1,000, he said smugly. "Where did you see that?" I asked, shocked. "The deposit statement was left on the desk." "Fool, no matter how much you talk back to me, you still earn less than me. If I don't support you, you can't even live on your own," he said triumphantly. Matthew continued, "This is your punishment for defying me. I'll stay at my parents' house for a while. Try living on your own. You'll understand how much you need me." "Parents' house? You can't be serious," I said, watching as he quickly packed his things. "I'll take both the joint account and my personal account passbooks and cards. You'll manage with just your earnings, won't you?" With that, Matthew left, leaving me to live alone. Once I started living on my own, I quickly realized how comfortable it was. There was no one to complain about the menu, and I could cook whatever I wanted. Since Matthew was the one who mostly messed up the room, cleaning was a breeze. Without a husband who drank and came home late every night, I didn't have to spend extra money. Was life actually better without him? Just as I was starting to think that, Matthew called. "Hey, are you alive? I thought you being so stubborn wouldn't come crying to me, so I called. Have you realized how much you need me? If you apologize now, I might come back, but you'll have to promise not to defy me anymore." "You don't have to come back," I responded immediately. "Huh?" Matthew let out a strange noise, clearly surprised. "I realized something after being away from you and being alone. It's better without you." "Stop talking nonsense. How do you plan to live on your own? You can't live on $1,000, can you?" "What you saw wasn't my salary statement, but the amount paid for expenses. My company, unlike yours, doesn't skimp on expenses." "Expenses, you say?" "Yes, my salary is $4,000. $4,000? How can you, a vocational school graduate, earn that much?" "I practiced a lot of practical work at vocational school to become immediately employable, and my company allowed me to obtain many useful certifications. Thanks to those qualifications, I received offers from companies I wanted, and I've been promoted smoothly since I joined. So I think a $4,000 salary is fair, and it's a natural result." "How can you, a vocational school graduate, earn more than me, a university graduate?" "You always look down on vocational school graduates, but Matthew, your university is just a 4-year institution and practically unknown, right? Bragging about being from a third-rate university just because it's a 4-year institution doesn't mean you'll be hired by a decent company. Maybe a company with harsh working conditions like yours finds you easy to handle. After all I've done to support you, how can you say that? You don't understand anything. Your salary alone couldn't possibly maintain this lifestyle. No matter how much we save on living expenses, $1,500 can't cover rent, utilities, your drinking expenses, and shopping for hobbies. If it weren't for my salary, we would have gone bankrupt long ago." "You never said a word about this before," Matthew stammered. "You were the one managing the account, right? I assumed you noticed. I'm surprised you had no sense of urgency, even though the balance was steadily decreasing." "I didn't have time to look at that all the time. Both our salaries are our money." "Yes, that's true. I didn't care who earned more as long as our savings were growing. I had no problem using my salary for our future, but it seems that my salary wasn't going into savings at all. But all that money was spent on your drinking parties and hobbies," I said, my patience finally wearing thin. "I've had enough of that, and I've realized I don't need you anymore. So you don't have to come back." "Wait, are you breaking up with me?" Matthew's tone suddenly shifted from arrogance to desperation. "But if my salary is gone, you won't be able to live, right?" It was clear he was becoming frantic. "Wait, don't leave me," he pleaded. His sudden change of heart was almost laughable, given how he previously boasted about supporting me. I decided to throw his own words back at him. "Well, if you apologize now, I might forgive you, but you'll have to promise not to defy me anymore." I understand. I promise," Matthew stammered. "Really?" "Yes. I'll even increase the living expenses I give you," he added desperately. I couldn't help but laugh at his offer. "Give me living expenses? What are you talking about? From now on, you'll be the one doing the housework, so I don't need any living expenses." "Me? Doing housework?" he asked, incredulous. "Yes. You said it yourself. It's only natural for the one who earns less to do the housework. Between your $1,500 and my $4,000, you as a university graduate should be able to figure out who earns less, right? From now on, I'll give you living expenses and you'll do the housework. I'll manage the finances." But housework is a woman's job, right?" Matthew tried to argue, clearly struggling with the idea. "Oh, are you defying me already? Planning to break the promise?" I warned him, my tone firm. "I'm ready to divorce any time, you know." "Wait. I understand. Matthew finally conceded, agreeing to take on all the housework as I had instructed. After that, I continued making demands. "Matthew, no more unpaid overtime from now on." "Wait a minute. I can't finish my work without overtime," he protested. "There's no need to do unpaid overtime. If you must work extra hours, make sure the company pays you for it. And also, I won't be covering your entertainment expenses anymore. What? But the only money I have to spend freely is the living expenses I get at the beginning of the month. How am I supposed to go out drinking with that? You should be able to get entertainment expenses from the company. Talk to them about that. If you go out for drinks for non-work reasons, I'll consider giving you additional social expenses. Matthew tried to negotiate with his company for overtime pay and entertainment expenses, but his efforts were dismissed. The supervisors who had once praised him with phrases like, "We rely on you," and "You're our star," suddenly turned cold. It was only then that Matthew began to realize his company was far from normal. Annika was right, he admitted to himself. They just wanted an employee who would do unpaid overtime and fund his own entertainment without complaining. Faced with this harsh reality, Matthew decided to start job hunting, but his search was unsuccessful. No company wanted to hire a third-rate university graduate with no qualifications or skills. During interviews, he was frequently told, "If only you had at least one qualification." Having failed miserably in his job search, Matthew turned to me, finally humbled. "The qualifications you have are actually amazing," he admitted. "I've always looked down on you for being a vocational school graduate, but you're far more incredible than I am. I was wrong. I'm sorry for everything." Matthew, who had once been so uncooperative and unreasonable in our married life, had completely changed. He eventually started working part-time at a nearby supermarket. "I'm not as efficient at housework as you are yet, so I chose a place where I can come home early," he said. "From now on, I'll support you from behind." "Thank you, Matthew, but I want you to continue job hunting. We can do the housework together whenever we can. Let's work as a team from now on." "But even if I keep job hunting, it's impossible for me to join a company that pays better than yours," he sighed. "Don't worry about that," I reassured him. "I was always against your idea that the one who doesn't earn does the housework. I just wanted you to understand, so I said the same thing. Matthew, why don't you look for a job you really want to do, without worrying about the money?" After that, Matthew began checking job listings and studying for qualifications during his part-time work. "If I don't have any skills, I thought I'd at least get some qualifications. Annika, can you help me with what I don't understand?" "Yes, of course," I agreed, happy to see this new side of him. Although our relationship had completely flipped from what it was initially, Matthew and I were getting along much better than when we were newlyweds. I found myself liking this new Matthew much more than the old one. Together, we could continue living as a couple, combining our strengths. Don't you dare interfere, outsider. If you can't hand over your entire salary to me, then leave. What? I'm the daughter of this house, and you're just an outsider. If you agree to give me your salary every month, I might let you stay. Otherwise, get out. I was dumbfounded by the harsh words spat out by my sister-in-law, Arlene. After 10 years of caring for my mother-in-law, Lexi, it was absurd to be treated like this by Arlene, who did nothing but laze around. Still, I believed in the bond I had with Lexi and simply responded, "I understand," before leaving the house. But I knew Arlene's way wouldn't work forever. My name is Crystal. I married Elliot 20 years ago, and from that moment, I also began living with his mother, Lexi. After Elliot's father passed away, we decided not to leave Lexi alone. Fortunately, Lexi was a kind and generous person, and we got along well. However, 10 years ago, Lexi fell ill, and since then, I've been her primary caregiver. I left my job and became a freelancer to devote more time to her. Having lost my parents early on, Lexi became like a real mother to me, so caring for her was never a burden. 3 years ago, my husband, Elliot, tragically passed away in a sudden accident. The shock of losing her only son left Lexi a shadow of her former self. Although her body was frail, her mind remained sharp. But after Elliot's death, she began to fade away. I couldn't bear to see her deteriorate further or risk developing dementia. I loved and admired the always bright and positive Lexi, so I vowed to support her. Sharing the grief of losing my husband with Lexi was more comforting than enduring it alone. In-laws or not, I was determined to continue living here and caring for her. But trouble soon arrived from the other side, my late husband's younger sister, Arlene. She returned home after her divorce and quickly became a source of strife. Elliot used to say with a wry smile, "She's much younger and has always been spoiled." Indeed, Arlene was self-centered and demanding. acting like a queen whenever she visited for holidays. She never helped with care, cooking, or household chores, but would eat, drink, and leave a mess behind. Sometimes she even hurled nasty words our way, and expecting gratitude from her was futile. Despite knowing I was busy with caregiving, Arlene would frequently leave her child with me and go off to have fun. When she finally came to pick up her child, she would take home the food I had made without permission. Even in her own home, such behavior was excessive. Once I gently pointed this out to her, but she snapped back, "Crystal, you're just a barren freeloader, so the least you can do is all the housework, right? It's sad for mom not having grandchildren, so that's why I bring my kids here." Hearing such cruel words from her, especially when I had longed for children but couldn't have any, was unbelievable. I couldn't believe she was Lexi's daughter. Realizing it was pointless to argue, I decided not to say anything. We didn't see each other often, and I thought I could just endure it. But as I hoped to live peacefully, Arlene's visits became more frequent. "Arlene, why are you leaving your child here so often and coming home late?" Lexi once asked. "I started a part-time job because the kids need more money. You must be happy to see your grandchild," she replied. "Yes," Lexa said, but she seemed unconvinced. I wondered why Arlene would work until night while her child was still young. It didn't seem to be out of financial necessity, but I kept silent. Then one day, Arlene arrived unannounced again. This time, instead of leaving her child, she dragged in a large travel trunk. "I got divorced, so I'll be living here from now on," she suddenly declared. Lexi and I were shocked and asked what she meant. With a tearful expression, Arlene began to speak. She claimed she had endured violence from her husband for a long time and had finally decided to divorce him. Unable to bear it any longer, she left the house under the condition of divorce, leaving her child behind because her husband wouldn't allow her to take them. I stood there stunned. I had met Arlene's husband a few times, and he seemed gentle and kind, not at all like the person she described. In fact, it was Arlene who often yelled at her husband and children unreasonably. I doubted Arlene's story, but Lexi, perhaps believing her daughter's words, agreed to let her stay. Lexi apologized to me, saying, "As a mother, I can't ignore my daughter being divorced and kicked out, but living with Arlene." "Thank you, Crystal. That's the situation, so I'm counting on you," Arlene said, grinning with eyes that weren't even slightly damp. It was all an act, wasn't it? Thus began life under one roof with the returned Arlene, who continued to do nothing. She didn't care for her own mother, let alone cook, do laundry, or clean, yet she kept giving orders. Did she really think I was her servant? "Hey, what's with this bland all-meat meal? Are you messing with me? This meal is low in salt considering Lexi's health. Arlene, if you don't like it, why don't you cook something yourself?" "What? Don't tell me what to do. You're just a freeloader," Arlene shot back with venom. "My brother is dead, and you're practically a stranger now. Why are you still living in this house?" "Who would care for Lexa if I weren't here?" I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "If it wasn't for that, I'd have kicked you out long ago." The peaceful days of living with Lexi seemed like a distant memory. Day by day, the stress of dealing with Arlene grew, but I made sure Lexi never noticed. One day, Lexi spoke up. "Crystal, there's a place I want to go. It's tough with the wheelchair, but could you come with me?" "Of course, Lexi. Shall we stop by that cafe we used to visit?" Lexi and I had a favorite cafe nearby. We used to go there often when she was healthier. "That sounds wonderful," she replied, her voice filled with a rare warmth. "I have something important to talk to you about." A month later, Arlene came home from one of her outings, not even bothering to greet us. "Hey, are you working right now?" she asked with a hint of disdain. "Yes, I'm taking on jobs I can do from home. I want to prioritize Lexi's care, so I don't have as much time as before." "So you're getting paid? Then give me all your earnings." "What?" I was baffled by Arlene's audacity. "It's ridiculous to let a stranger live here for free. You should pay rent and utilities." "Rent? I've been living here since I got married. We paid for the remodeling, and I've been covering all the utilities. But the land and house belong to us. Now that my brother's gone, I can say whatever I want." "What do you mean? I'm just stating facts. Maybe you should find a job if you're not going to take care of Lexi." Frustrated, I couldn't help but retort, "What right does a stranger have to say anything? Caring for mom is just a performance. There's no inheritance for you, a stranger." Don't talk nonsense. As her daughter, don't you want to care for her and worry about her? Oh, you're so annoying. Don't meddle, outsider. If you can't hand over your entire salary to me, then leave. Listen, I'm the daughter of this house, and you're just an outsider. If you agree to give me your salary every month, I might let you stay. Otherwise, leave. I was dumbfounded by Arlene's words. For the past 10 years, I had been the one caring for Lexi, who couldn't move freely and who stayed by her side when her son died. I wanted to scream, I'm more of a daughter than you are. Despite not being related by blood, I had done all the housework and cared for Lexi without complaint. My voice trembled with anger. But Arlene just laughed scornfully. Isn't it natural to get paid for letting someone who's not even family live in the house? You must be after the inheritance. All right, if that's how it is, I'll leave. Huh, so you can't pay me the salary? What about mom's care? Promise me you'll take care of that properly. Yeah, I got it. Stop nagging. You know the helper you've been using, right? Arrange for them to come every day and make sure you handle the payment. I couldn't believe it. She had no intention of taking care of her mother herself. I couldn't leave Lexi with someone like that. I immediately called a care manager I knew. A few days later, I moved out, but Arlene was hardly ever home, always out and about. I coordinated with the care manager and visited Lexi when Arlene was absent. I'm so sorry, Crystal. I never thought she'd kick you out. I told her to take it back, but she wouldn't listen, Lexi said, her voice heavy with regret. Lexi, don't worry about it. Just call me if you need anything. Then suddenly, the end came. Lexa was stable during the day but had an attack of her chronic illness in the evening. I rushed to the hospital when the care manager informed me, but Arlene was nowhere to be seen. A few hours after being admitted, the doctors did all they could, but Lex had passed away. I couldn't say goodbye or thank her. I couldn't stop crying. A few days after the funeral, all the relatives gathered at the house where only Arlene now lived. It seemed Lexi had requested everyone be present when her will was read. Lexi's lawyer looked over the gathered relatives and said, "Before I read the will, please listen to a voice recording that Lexi left as her final wish." Lexi's voice played, and everyone listened intently. "Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the friendships we had during my life. Now I will leave my will regarding my estate. It's not a large amount, but I wanted no troubles, so I requested all my relatives to be present. To my daughter Arlene, I leave $100,000. She did nothing to help care for her parent, but she's divorced with a young child. I'm leaving her this amount, which is her legal share, hoping she'll use it for alimony and for the child." "What legal share? It's not the full amount," Arlene exclaimed loudly, and the relatives began to murmur. "Arlene's divorced. She hasn't shown her face at family gatherings in years. Alimony, she doesn't even have custody of her child. Wasn't it Elliot's wife who took care of everything? She stayed and cared even after he died," someone whispered. Arlene's face turned red, her clenched fists trembling with anger. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Lexi's voice continued, oblivious to Arlene's fury. "Some of you may be surprised to hear of Arlene's divorce. The reason was her infidelity." The relatives gasped, and Arlene's face changed color. "Why would you mention that?" she muttered. "Instead of protecting her family by taking care of me, she neglected her child and ran around with her lover. Her husband caught her and divorced her, taking custody. Honestly, I didn't want to leave Arlene a single dollar, but she's always been greedy and would claim her rights. So to not trouble the other heirs, I'm only leaving her half of the legal inheritance. Please use it properly to pay the alimony and for the benefit of the grandchild." The room was filled with shock. Hearing Lexi's voice was both comforting and devastating to me. "And to you, Crystal," Lexa continued, her tone softening. "Thank you for marrying my son and for everything you've done since. I loved your honesty and kindness. It must have been hardest on you when Elliot died so young, but you bravely stayed by my side and took care of me. No amount of gratitude is enough." Tears overflowed from my eyes at Lexi's words. I know what it's like to take care of a parent, and caregiving is truly a tough task. You did it without a single complaint, without accepting any money, and always with a smile. "Crystal, I am leaving you the same amount of $100,000 as my daughter, as well as our house and land. You are free to sell or rent the house, but I'd be happy if you remembered the days we spent together here." Lexi, I couldn't take it anymore. I started crying like a child. I could never be grateful enough. She treated me like her real mother, having lost my own parents early. To all my relatives, thank you for everything. Asterisk asterisk, my last wish asterisk asterisk. My last wish is for you to watch over my son's widow, Crystal, who will now be alone. Ensure she lives a bright and strong life. That's all. Lexi's voice echoed through the room. All I could hear around me were sobs. I couldn't stop my own tears either. Only Arlene was screaming loudly in such a situation. This is ridiculous. Such a will is invalid. Are you some kind of fake lawyer? She shouted. If you have doubts, we can meet in court. I'll appear as the opposing lawyer, and you'll see I'm legitimate, the lawyer calmly replied. That woman was just my brother's wife, a stranger. I'm the real daughter. It's absurd she gets the same amount and the house too. Arlene's voice was filled with desperation. She hadn't even attended Lexi's last moments, shedding not a single tear, only frantic now. Unforgivable. This hellish creature. I wiped my tears and stood up. Arlene, Mom might have been physically disabled, but she thought more of her family than anyone. This was the result of that. You knew about it. That's why you played dumb and left, Arlene accused, her face twisted with anger. I'm hearing about the will for the first time now. How did Mom even know about my relationships? Mom was worried when you started leaving your child frequently. That's why she contacted your ex-husband after your divorce. What? Then I met and talked with him. Lexa couldn't go out alone. Your husband tried to reconcile many times despite your repeated infidelities. He showed me the evidence. But the kind husband had no intention to demand alimony. Yet, Lexa suggested he should. She said the 3-year statute of limitations from the divorce would soon be up. No, wait, that's a lie. Arlene's voice cracked, her face growing pale as she realized the gravity of the situation. Everyone in the room looked at Arlene with contempt, neglecting her child and husband for affairs. Lexa probably didn't even want to leave her anything. Having a rightful heir like this can be troublesome, but it must have been for the grandchild's sake. She was kind, the relatives commented, casting stern looks at Arlene. Also about my inheritance, you seem unhappy, but I was legally adopted by Mom. I'm Lexi's child in the eyes of the law. What? Arlene turned even paler but kept on ranting. That's impossible. I didn't approve of that. It's not allowed without the daughter's consent. No consent is needed for an adoption, the lawyer added, sealing Arlene's fate. So I may have been driven out of the house, but things have changed. Since I'm inheriting the house, could you pack your things and leave soon? Arlene collapsed on the spot, unable to respond. There was applause from the relatives who heard everything. Some had tears in their eyes. It's good that you, who care for Lexi, are rewarded. You were like a real daughter. If you have any trouble, let us know, one of them said. I bowed deeply. Thank you. Lexa had probably gathered everyone to ensure I wouldn't be misunderstood or rumored about after inheriting the estate. After everything was made public and she lost the trust of the relatives, Arlene was left without anyone speaking to her. She later left the house in a huff, reportedly paying alimony to her ex-husband from her inheritance, but her life afterwards seemed difficult. Yet the fact that tens of thousands of dollars remained for Arlene, who had no savings or job, speaks volumes about Lexi's generosity. Ideally, she should use the money for her child and start working hard. But people like her rarely change. She'll probably run out of money soon. As for me, I'm now living leisurely, sorting through the belongings in my old home. The house is too big for one person, and the property taxes are quite high. I need to think about what to do. The lawyer gave me the recording of Lexa reading her will, saying Lexa had asked for me to have it, just remembering her words. Thank you for everything. I love your honesty and kindness. Makes me tear up. I wonder if I was able to properly express my gratitude to Lexi. I never thought of it as caregiving, but as something natural, being together all the time. Could my feelings have been conveyed through that? Maybe the contents of the will are Lexi's answer. I wiped my tears. It's still too soon. Staying in the house brings waves of sadness. If I keep crying, I'll worry my husband and Lexi above. All right, today I'll go to that cafe for the first time in a while. I said it out loud. It seems it will take a bit more time before I can let go of this house filled with memories of my husband and Lexi. My husband changed me. Once I was someone who shied away from social interactions. With him, I thought I could finally be happy. But after we got married, everything changed. The yelling began and the shoving, and eventually he kicked me while I was sick in bed. This is not the man I married. Love has turned into fear. I want to leave, but I'm too scared. Still, I know that if anything is going to change, it has to start with me. I need to speak up. Let's break up. My name is Scarlett. I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to Daniel for 2 years. I'm a housewife. I lost my parents when I was young, and my grandmother, who raised me, passed away when I was in high school. Since then, I've been afraid of getting close to anyone because it hurts too much when they leave. I never had a boyfriend or close friends. I was always alone. But Daniel was different. He saw something in me that no one else did. I was annoyed by his persistence at first, but eventually I gave in, and he became the most important person in my life. That's how we ended up getting married 2 years ago. But now I'm starting to question if it was the right decision. Daniel changed after we got married. Within a few months, he started coming home less and less, often without telling me when he'd be back. He began criticizing me for the way I managed the house. Why isn't dinner ready? He'd ask coldly. When I explained that I thought he'd be late, he would sigh and give me a withering look. You're staying home on my dime and can't even manage the housework? What kind of wife are you? Then he'd grab his change of clothes and leave without another word. I started making dinner every night, even on the days he didn't come home. But sometimes he wouldn't return for a whole week. I couldn't stop wondering if he was tired of me or if he saw something in me he didn't like after we got married. I didn't want our sweet memories to be lies. I was terrified of being abandoned and alone again. My mind was a mess, and after 6 months of living like this, I decided that something had to change. I didn't want to be a burden on Daniel, and honestly, we were hardly even a married couple anymore. When Daniel finally came home, I asked him if he was considering a divorce. To my surprise, he looked shocked. That's not it, Scarlett. I've just been busy with work. I'm sorry for being cold lately. Please don't talk like that, he said, panic in his voice, and hugged me for the first time in months. I felt guilty for not considering how hard he was working. But if he didn't communicate, how could I understand his struggles? I asked him to keep me in the loop moving forward, to talk to me when something was bothering him. Of course, I promise, he said. Seeing Daniel smile brought me relief for the first time in a while. For a moment, our troubles seemed like a bad dream, and life returned to normal. Even though there were still days when Daniel didn't come home, he kept me updated, and just that alone started to make me happy again. However, a year after we got married, on our wedding anniversary, Daniel stood me up. He never showed up at the restaurant we had reserved. I was heartbroken, especially since it was our anniversary. I never thought he'd cancel. Of course, it was because of work. I tried to be understanding, but it still hurt. I wish he would have told me sooner. When Daniel finally came home the day after our anniversary and I told him how I felt, he glared at me. Why would you say something like that? Don't you see how hard I'm working? I do appreciate how hard he works, but I wanted him to prioritize our anniversary. When I expressed this, Daniel knocked the food off the table, shattering the dish. The sound echoed through the room. You're so selfish. Are you sure you're not just after my money? He shouted. Daniel's mother, Olivia, founded her own company where Daniel and his brother work. Many have pegged Daniel as the future CEO, and he had warned me before that gold diggers had targeted him in the past. The only one who really loves me is Scarlett, he once told me with a smile. And honestly, I've never once thought about his family's wealth. When I told him this, Daniel looked at me with disbelief. Then get a job. You've got too much free time if you're complaining about me. You do it if you really love me, right? Would getting a job really solve this issue? I hesitated, but ultimately, I nodded. I didn't want Daniel to think I was with him for his money. And more than anything, I didn't want him to leave me. I began to question my sanity, convinced that Daniel's anger was my fault. So I found a full-time job, hoping that if I kept the house tidy before and after work, Daniel wouldn't complain. One day, Olivia contacted me. Scarlett, I heard you're working now. What happened? Weren't you planning to quit after getting married? She asked. I forced a smile and said I had time to spare. Olivia had always been kind to me since the moment we met. She was a busy CEO, yet she always checked in on me. I vividly remember the time we went shopping right after the wedding. She looked at me like I was a dream come true. Daniel used to have a sister who tragically passed away, And maybe that's why Olivia is so kind to me. Reach out if you're ever in trouble, she once said, her kind words nearly bringing me to tears. I never knew my parents, but I imagine this is how it feels to have a mother. Thinking about it warms my heart a little. I didn't want to cause any trouble for Olivia. Supporting her son Daniel was my role after all. But that was easier said than done, especially when Daniel hardly ever came home. Since I started working, he stopped handing over any money to me. We were getting by, but I couldn't help but wonder if this was okay. I found myself troubled by the same thoughts over and over. Nothing had changed since before. Just as I was contemplating this, Daniel came home after being away for a long time. "Did you say anything to Mom?" he asked, his voice tense. I told him about the call I received from Olivia. He seemed angry at first, but then smiled in relief when he found out I hadn't said anything to her. "That's my wife. Make sure to tell Mom we're getting along just fine, okay?" he said. I asked Daniel if we were really doing as well as he thought. "I can focus on my job as the future CEO because you handle things so well, Scarlett. Once you're the CEO's wife, I'll treat you to a lavish life," he said, clearly satisfied, but hearing that made my heart sink. I never wanted to be a CEO's wife. I just wanted to build a happy home with Daniel. That was enough for me. As I said this, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. Daniel had slapped me. "How dare you say that when I'm working so hard? I married you, so just listen to me," he snarled. This wasn't the Daniel I knew. Tears started to flow, which only seemed to anger him more. "Wake me up when dinner's ready," he said, storming off to the bedroom. I made dinner while crying that night, eating a tasteless meal in silence with Daniel. Things went downhill from there. Daniel started coming home more often. Perhaps Olivia had said something, but he was cold as ice to me. I thought about leaving him, but I didn't know if he would agree to a divorce. And what if he hit me again? Ever since that day, Daniel would poke or lightly kick me, and I found myself flinching whenever he raised his voice or hand. He even made me quit my job, even though it was his idea for me to work in the first place. Was it just to torment me? I had no idea what Daniel wanted from me. My sole focus every day was to avoid getting yelled at by Daniel. Amidst all this, Daniel invited me to Olivia's birthday party. "There will be a lot of people there, so don't embarrass me. Get your hair done and wear something appropriate," he instructed. Despite everything, I was looking forward to a break. Seeing Olivia would give me the strength to get through the days. But my luck ran out. I came down with a high fever on the day of Olivia's birthday. My temperature was 103 degrees, and it might even go higher. "I can't go to your parents' house," I told Daniel. As expected, Daniel yelled at me. "How could you get sick at a time like this? You're useless," he shouted. I apologized over and over, but Daniel kicked me repeatedly through the comforter. "I'm going ahead. Get ready and come to my parents' house," he ordered, insisting I attend despite my fever. I murmured that I couldn't go, but Daniel ignored me and left the house. If I didn't go, who knew what he'd do to me next? Desperate, I put on makeup, fixed my hair, and got ready. But every move was slow, and my foggy head made everything take too long. Before I knew it, over an hour had passed since Daniel left. Daniel called to rush me, annoyed that I hadn't arrived yet. "Get it together. Come to the celebration now. Are you trying to embarrass me?" he snapped. I quickly called a taxi and arrived at the in-laws' house, hoping this would prevent more scolding. But when I got there, the relatives and guests looked at me in disbelief. "Scarlett, what are you wearing?" Even Olivia, who noticed me, looked puzzled. I caught my reflection in a full-length mirror in the house. My makeup and hair were a mess. The word disheveled didn't even begin to describe how I looked. I apologized to Olivia, who gave me a cold stare, and she sighed in disbelief. "Scarlett, you should break up with Daniel," she said. To my surprise, Daniel chimed in cheerfully. "Come on, Mom, give her a break. She just overslept. She didn't even remember it was your birthday." I bowed my head at his unhelpful comment, and then a loud slap resonated through the room. I looked up to see that Olivia had slapped Daniel. "Why?" Daniel asked, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. "Daniel, did you force Scarlett to come even though she's clearly unwell? Is that how a person should act?" Olivia demanded, her voice firm and disappointed. Daniel tried to argue back. Daniel was slapped on the other cheek before he could speak. Olivia, her face set with determination, said, "I have evidence that you're having an affair. Shall we talk about it?" She took Daniel into the study, and I was led to the guest room by my brother-in-law, Andrew, to rest. Exhaustion and medication soon sent me into a deep sleep. When I woke up, it was nighttime. Daniel sat in submission, and Olivia looked exasperated. Olivia quickly filled me in on what had happened. Daniel had been dating someone even before our marriage and had plans to marry her. However, Daniel's ex had a kleptomania issue and had stolen from Olivia during a visit to their home. Naturally, Olivia banned her from the house and made it clear they wouldn't support Daniel if he married her. That's why Daniel chose me as a cover-up. He thought I resembled his late sister, hoping Olivia would like me and, in turn, approve of him. Olivia didn't elaborate further, but I suspected that Daniel also saw my docile nature as an opportunity to manipulate me. Daniel planned to break up with you after he became CEO. I've only met Scarlett a few times a year, but she seemed less lively each time. That's why I investigated, Olivia said, her voice tinged with sorrow. I'm really sorry about Daniel. Suddenly, everything made sense. Daniel had never loved me from the start. Surprisingly, I felt more relieved than sad because I had already been contemplating leaving. Love had turned into fear after all the shouting and abuse. Olivia, I'm leaving him, I said firmly. Olivia nodded. Daniel, you'd better pay the alimony properly in court. Sign these divorce papers and this pledge. She demanded $50,000 in alimony and that I quit my job. Daniel was in disbelief as I tried to process the possibility of losing my job. Turning to me for help, he pleaded through tears, I really loved you, Scarlett. I was just meeting my ex because she's relentless. I didn't know what she'd do if I didn't. Trust me. But his tears weren't for me. I still had the bruise from that morning. I could easily get a medical report and file charges, I warned him. Sign the papers if you don't want to be sued. Olivia, unaware of the physical abuse, burst into tears and began hitting Daniel. You're a terrible person. Don't ever come back home. We're done, she yelled. Andrew stepped in, and Daniel, sobbing, signed the papers. If he regretted it so much, he shouldn't have done it in the first place, I thought. I wondered if I also had a part in this for putting up with it for so long. Watching Daniel cry, I vowed never to neglect my own feelings again. After the divorce, I focused on moving and job hunting. It was a hectic time, but Andrew helped me find a new place, and Olivia even referred me to a job. I was being pampered, really. I managed to find a job in my previous field and recently received a job offer based on merit after a proper interview, not connections. Ever since, Olivia has been a bit overprotective, which worries me a little. But starting a new job while adjusting to a new lifestyle is bound to be challenging. Still, I feel more satisfied and secure than anxious. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Daniel loitering near my workplace. He looked awful. His clothes were dirty, and he lacked the energy he once had. Long story short, he had been dumped by his girlfriend and wanted to get back together with me. I couldn't help but laugh. I then showed him my right hand, where a new ring sparkled. I've been dating your brother recently. I'm not sure about marriage yet, but I do know he's a much better person than you. Plus, he's next in line to be CEO. Daniel had always arrogantly assumed he would take over the family business, but Olivia never considered him a suitable successor. Being married to him was a struggle, but there's one thing I'm grateful for. He introduced me to a family where I'm truly cherished now. With a smile, I conveyed this to Daniel. He collapsed on the spot, falling to his knees and sobbing. That was the moment I felt truly glad to have left him. While I still can't contemplate marriage due to my history with Daniel, I've decided to trust those who supported me during my toughest times. From now on, I'll live being true to my feelings. Lately, something seemed off with my mom, who lives alone. The first thought that crossed my mind was Alzheimer's. I suggested to my husband and mother-in-law that my mom move in with us, but they didn't agree. Worse, my husband said, if you push this, we're getting a divorce. Fine, I get it, I snapped. If you want me to leave, I will, but you'll regret it. My name is Atoria, and I'm 35 years old. I work from home as an illustrator and currently live with my husband Powell and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after the passing of my father-in-law, we decided to have her move in with us. I was concerned about her well-being, so I agreed to the arrangement. We had just built a new house, so space wasn't an issue, and we easily prepared a room for her. However, Powell doesn't earn much, and we couldn't afford the house on our own, so my mom helped us financially. My mother-in-law seemed thrilled about the decision, especially since Powell is her only son. After losing her husband, she began to smile more and seemed to regain her spirit within a few months. But that peace didn't last long. About 6 months into our living arrangement, she started picking on me. One morning, after eating the breakfast I had prepared, she sighed heavily. This tastes terrible. Atoria, why do you keep serving me such salty food? What's your intention? I'm sorry, I tasted it before serving, I replied, trying to stay calm. I don't want to hear excuses. Are you trying to send me to an early grave with all this salt? No, I didn't mean to. And another thing, she interrupted. Why are you always hiding in your room? You should be doing the housework. But I'm working right now, I protested. Work? Sitting at your computer and drawing isn't work. How is that a job? This is my job. Yes, I draw, but it's not just for fun, I explained, feeling frustrated. Don't talk back to me. If you do, I'll tell Powell you're neglecting your duties. That's not true, but that was just the beginning. She even started asking me for money. Just $500, Atoria, she would say. I can't afford that right now. Stingy, aren't you? Aren't you earning money with your computer? She sneered. It was so cheeky of her to mention my earnings only when she wanted money. In the end, I gave in and handed her the cash. This went on for a while, and as my work suffered, my frustration grew. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to Powell. Hey, Powell, can we talk? I asked hesitantly. What? I just got back from work, and I'm tired, he replied, clearly annoyed. I'm sorry, but can we do something about your mom? She interrupts my work daily, complains about the chores, and even asks for money. I can't get any work done, and it's really stressing me out. He looked at me with annoyance and responded sarcastically, you don't have to consult me about every little thing. What? I was taken aback. When mom acts like that, it means you're not doing your job as a wife right. It's your fault. Besides, she's a housewife. Why can't you just give her some spending money willingly? Wait a minute. I do all the housework, and why should I be the one giving her money? Because if you were doing the housework properly, she wouldn't be upset. Understand that. Think of the money as a token of gratitude, a fee for her guidance on your poor housekeeping. That's not. I started to protest, but his words left me dizzy. Instead of support, he blamed me. He continued looking down at me. Listen, you're the wife here. You married into my family, so just listen and do as you're told. Be quiet. Mom has been a housewife longer than you. She knows more. Her word is law. Got it? But, from now on, if you upset Mom, I won't forgive you. Just do your job as a wife perfectly. Understand? With a face like a gargoyle, he stormed out of the room. Tears streamed down my face. Why is it always me? Why am I the one being blamed? We started living together thinking it was a good thing, but I never expected it to turn out like this. I deeply regretted agreeing to live with them. One day, I felt the need to hear my mom's voice, so I called her. Mom, it's me, Atoria. Oh, Atoria, it's been so long since you last called. What have you been up to? Mom, it's only been 2 days since we last spoke. What are you talking about? You haven't contacted me in 2 months, she insisted. A cold feeling crept over me. Our conversation wasn't making sense. The word Alzheimer's crossed my mind. Worried, I took my mom to the hospital the next day, and my fears were confirmed. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Though it was mild, the doctor said it would be difficult for her to live alone. She's already well into her 70s. I couldn't believe that my energetic mom had Alzheimer's. That night, I told my husband and mother-in-law about the diagnosis. Powell, mother, I need to talk to you about something. They both looked annoyed. What is it? It's probably nothing important, Powell muttered. Is it even relevant to us? My mother-in-law added. It's about my mom. Today she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What? Alzheimer's? Your mom, seriously? Powell asked, incredulous. Yes, so about what we should do. Before I could finish, they burst into laughter. Poor thing, having Alzheimer's. I don't want to be involved with sick people, my mother-in-law sneered. Right. How weak must her brain be to get Alzheimer's at her age, Powell added. Why are you saying such things? I asked, shocked. Ignoring my confusion, they continued laughing. People who get Alzheimer's are those who don't think much in their daily lives, my mother-in-law remarked. Yeah, just like you, not thinking much. That's why you'll get Alzheimer's too, Powell said, chuckling. Stop it. How can you say such cruel things? I demanded. Why not? It's the truth, right? Yeah, Mom, we're just telling the truth. This was too much. Everything went dark as their cruelty overwhelmed me. You're not thinking of taking care of your mom, are you? Powell asked, his tone suddenly serious. Well, I was hoping she could live with us, here. Are you kidding me? Why should we live with someone with Alzheimer's? Powell snapped. She's not just someone with Alzheimer's. She's still in the early stages and can take care of herself. That's not the point. We're not living with her, period. I accepted living with your mother, so why not mine? I retorted, trying to keep calm. Suddenly, Powell slammed the table and glared at me. Don't compare a healthy person like my mom to your sick mother. Got it? I will never agree to live with her. But if something happens to her, I'll regret it forever, I pleaded. I don't care about your regrets. You married into this family, so just listen to us. No matter how much I tried to persuade them, their stance remained unchanged. So I made another proposal. If we can't live together, at least let me visit her regularly. What? If you do that, we'll have to manage the housework. I'm just really worried about her. Please? No. Why not? Obviously, every time you visit her, it'll cost money and we'll have to pay for her medical bills. Our finances will suffer. It's my money. No, you're not visiting her. End of story. Far from living with my mom, I wasn't even allowed to go to her place. I was completely stuck in all directions. Even my mother-in-law, who had been listening to the conversation, added a blow. Atoria, do you even understand your position here? Mother, please, I'm really worried about her. Enough. You're part of the Brown family now. Just listen to Powell and me. But enough. If you keep this up, we'll divorce. How dare you defy us? Get out. Hearing the word divorce from her, my husband joined in, barely holding back his laughter. Hey, divorce sounds good. We don't need a wife who prioritizes a sick person over her own family. Are you serious? I asked, my voice trembling with anger. You call yourself an illustrator, but you barely make anything. You're so arrogant, Powell sneered. It's a real job. Enough. Let's divorce. If you want to take care of a sick person so badly, just leave. All the anger I had been holding back exploded. I wouldn't let them mock me or my mom. They weren't my family anymore if that's how they felt. With my mind made up, I told them fine. If that's how you feel, I'll leave. For a moment, they looked shocked, but then they smirked. Good. Do what you want. Just leave quickly. I never thought you would leave on your own. I'm so happy, my mother-in-law said, grinning. I'll pack my things and go back to my mom's house. Send the divorce papers by mail. Sure thing. I'll get them from the courthouse tomorrow and send them right over. This is perfect. Just my lovely son and me living together. I'll go pack my things now. Hurry up. We're having a party with Mom tonight, Powell exclaimed. Sounds great. Let's go out for steak, my mother-in-law chimed in. This family was done. Watching them celebrate, I quickly started packing. Sitting with the two of them smiling broadly, I left that house behind. A few days later, I received the divorce papers from Powell, which I promptly signed and submitted. When I told my mom, she looked apologetic. I'm so sorry, Atoria. This is all because of me. Don't be silly. I feel so much better without those terrible people as family. When you first mentioned living together, I was actually worried about your mother-in-law. She's a bit off, right? I should have stopped the construction of the new house more firmly. I'm truly sorry. Don't apologize. I'm happy now, living here with you. Atoria, thank you so much. So is that matter all settled? Yes, it's all good. I'm already on it. I showed her the documents and my mom smirked mischievously. That's right. I won't let it end with just a divorce. My revenge is just beginning. 2 weeks later, just as I expected, I received a frantic call from my ex-husband. Hey, what the hell are you thinking? What do you mean? I asked, playing innocent. You know exactly what I mean. I got the house sale documents. You sent them, didn't you? Yes, I did. It's all written there. Any problems? Don't play games with me. Selling our house? I'll never allow it. The first thing I did after divorcing my husband was sell the house we lived in with his mother. He seemed to have forgotten about the time we built the house. And now he was angry and feeling betrayed. Why can't you sell that house? It's ours. Ours? Really? It's marital property. We're divorced, so we need to split the assets fairly. His absurd claim made me burst into laughter. Are you kidding? Split assets? Don't make me laugh. What's so funny? He demanded. Do you even realize why we were always short on money? That's because you never earned enough. I have savings, he protested. You're wrong. I had to give money to your mother almost every day. That's why my savings are almost gone. If we were to split assets, I'd just take half of your savings. You're joking, right? His voice faltered, as if he hadn't realized that my savings were nearly depleted. Still, he persisted. But we have the house. Our house. I told you I'm selling it. You can't decide that on your own. My mom and I live there. If you insist on selling, give me half the sale price. Remember when we bought the house? My mom paid for it in full because we couldn't get a loan. Did she? He asked, sounding unsure. Yes. At that time, I wasn't earning much, and you had just changed jobs with a low salary. My mom paid for the whole thing. I recently checked the property deed with her. The house is in her name. Oh, he trailed off, realization dawning on him. I remember now. I left everything to you. I thought so. But now you understand, right? We don't have the right to decide whether to sell the house. It's up to my mom, and she's on my side. Got it. Damn it, he muttered, finally realizing his position. His tone shifted to one of desperation. Please wait. What will happen to my mom and me without this house? I don't care. We filed for divorce, so we're strangers now. I owe you nothing. Don't say that. I apologize for everything. Just leave the house, please. So what's your plan? Buy the house in full from my mom? I asked, knowing it was impossible. Don't joke. That's impossible, he snapped, revealing his frustration. You heartless woman. His true feelings slipped out, and I seized the moment. Now you're asking for help? Do you think I'll forget all the times you and your mother belittled me? You think we can just pretend it never happened? You brought this on yourself. Please wait. I'm begging you, he pleaded. But it was too late. I'm genuinely relieved to cut ties with you and your terrible mother. From now on, it's just me and my mom. I couldn't care less about what happens to you too. I hope you both sink to the lowest depths together. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response and blocked his number. And just like that, I was finally free from them. Later on, I heard they moved out of the house and started living in a cramped apartment. With his meager salary and his mother, who had only ever been a housewife, their downfall was easy to imagine. Now, his mother apparently works a hectic part-time job at a supermarket. On the other hand, my mom and I are living peacefully. Thankfully, her Alzheimer's is still in the early stages, but I know it's going to get tougher in the future. That's why I want to spend as much time as possible with my mom, my only family. I've made a promise to myself to cherish every moment I have left with her.